Hey guys, Coach Adam from TeamElitePhysique.com talking to you again today with another bikini update. We have some things to talk about. We have an exciting week coming up. We have the Pittsburgh Pro happening next weekend, and it is going to be a huge show. Over the last weekend, we had some things that I think are going to mix up the Pittsburgh Pro and add a little bit of excitement to that Pittsburgh Pro. I was doing this video and I've kind of been holding off on doing this video because I was going to do kind of a combo video of this video and things to look forward for the Pittsburgh Pro, because the last weekend does affect the Pittsburgh Pro a little bit with how the competitors are coming in and how stiff that competition actually is. But I decided, you know what? Let's just review the Wasatch and review the Girl Power, because I don't have the list for Pittsburgh Pro. I have the list that was originally released, but I don't have any new competitors that are on the list. So this is the list that was originally there. And on Monday, there's going to be the full list will be released. And so that might mix things up. So I thought, you know what, let's talk about the shows over the weekend that happened. I know a couple of these athletes are going to the Pittsburgh Pro, but what if there's someone else that's going to be thrown into the mix and mix things up at Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh is going to be a crazy show, guys. That is definitely one to watch. If you have not looked at it yet, look at that list, look at getting that pay-per-view, because it is going to be one of the better shows of this year. Honestly, the competition there is probably going to be deeper than the Arnold. It's going to be like a junior Olympia. It's probably going to be the second toughest show this year outside of the Olympia, of course. This show is looking pretty crazy, and this weekend adds a little bit to it. So let's go ahead and jump into the weekend first, starting off with the Wasatch Warrior. Now, the Wasatch Warrior was a very interesting show because you had Emmy, who just won the San Diego show, and carrying that momentum into the Wasatch Warrior. So there's a lot of questions to be answered about this show. You know, there are a lot of bikini shows. So when someone wins a show, there are scenarios where you're like, well, she's good. Obviously, she won a pro show, but how good is she? How good is she going to be against that tier 1 top 15 in the world competition? And this was her first test of that. Now, last year, Emmy did not win a pro show. She did good in a couple competitions, but she was not able to secure the Olympia spot. She won the San Diego, had some momentum going to the Wasatch. And then looking at the lineup, I was like, wow, she's going to run into Jordan here. How good is Emmy? Is Emmy improved to the point now where she can actually beat out a top 15 Olympian? Is she that good? Or is it just kind of one of those shows before where, you know, she looked great, there wasn't any top tier competition, and, you know, she's not going to be a top 15 contender? Well, she answered that question, and she answered it quite well with a perfect score, beating out Jordan Brannon. And I was very surprised about that. You know, going into this show and looking at that lineup, Jordan was definitely the clear favorite, being, you know, ranked number 12 in the world. So is Emmy that good, right? That's the question. And we may find out that question here pretty soon. Now, I don't know what the Pittsburgh list holds on Monday, but I'm hearing that it's possible that she might be doing that show too. And wow, what a challenge that would be. And I think a great time for her if she does decide to do that show, because if she does, we're going to find out really where she's at. You know, she's going to be going up against Maureen, Amy, Jordan, Ashlyn. I mean, there's going to be some heavy hitters there, and we might see her in the mix even in the top 3 or so. I'm like, wow, she actually made some improvements to her physique, and now she is a top 10 contender. Who knows if that's the case? We don't know until you challenge yourself there. So we'll see if she's going to be there. I think, who knows, maybe she'll compete a couple more times and run into some other competitors throughout the year that we can kind of figure out where she's going to place at. But beating top 12 in the world is a pretty big deal. You know, that's a big deal. So who knows how good she's going to be? We're going to find out a lot more about her. But first, let's go ahead and jump into her physique and see why she got the win. So looking at Emmy's physique, I will say, when you look at her physique, she does have really good balance. She's got great lines, great hourglass shape. The only thing that I see in her physique that is maybe a little bit too much is I do think that she comes in a little bit lean and a little bit grainy. You know, you hear me say a lot, I want to see pretty muscle, you know, and pretty muscle basically means muscle that's round and full, but not dense and striated. Now, I want some density, but I don't want to see it where it's so grainy and so hard, right? So when I say these things, you can kind of visualize Maureen Blanquisco would be a perfect example of it, because Maureen has that round, full muscle, but it's not dense or striated, right? It's that pretty muscle. So the way I like to describe it is a dense muscle and a grainy muscle would be, if you looked at a steak, you know, they both can have the same size. So you can have a water balloon and you can have a steak. they could be the same size. So the muscle size is the same, right? It's the exact same size of muscle, but one looks like a steak, right? One looks like the grain of the steak. You can see the meat of the steak. And one is just a full, dense water balloon. The balloon's all the way full with water. It is dense and full. It's just the same size, but it does not have those striations and that density and that grain of the steak, right? It's obviously hard to be this lean these days as bikini is, without having some of that graininess, I should say. But you got to be careful, and some people can get a little grainier than others. And we look at Emmy's legs and we look at her development of her quads. I do think when we look at that top tier competition, she's a little bit grainier than most people that are in that top 10, top 15 competition. And also, I do think her legs are a little bit developed for bikini, just in the quad in that front pose. I think everywhere else it's pretty good. I think just in that quad in that front pose might be a little bit much. Now her balance is awesome. Her lines are awesome. Her hourglass shape is there. She flows. Her beauty flow is great. Complexion is great. Now, when we look at pro bikini, we look at, okay, what does she need to do to improve? I think that if she had just a kiss softer in the quads without as deep detail and grain, I think that it would help her physique quite a bit. Now, the other thing when I see Emmy from the back, her shape is not as extreme. Her hip to waist ratio is not as extreme as you look at some of these competitors. Like if you look at a Laura Lee, or you look at a Amy, or an Ashley Caldwell, or a Jennifer Dory, the waist to hip ratio is not on that level where it is a, big time hourglass shape, Coke bottle shape, right? Where you get the hip to waist ratio that really pops. The 3D glutes, we call it. So I do think that that's something that hurts her physique a little bit when she gets in those top tier competitions. And also, I do think that she comes in a little bit lean in those hamstrings and a little bit too etched in the tie-ins, just a little bit. Now, here's the thing. They like different competitors different ways. They might like her this way, and this might be the best thing for her. Obviously, it's working. It's the best she's ever done. So if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? That's the saying. If they like her like this, I would just keep bringing her in like this. But from my personal eye, looking at her next to a Maureen, next to an Amy or a Laura Lee or an Ashley, right? I would say she's coming in a little bit grainy, a little bit tight for that tier 1 competition. So other than that, everything is looking really good. I think that there's not much to improve there. When you get these super, super elite athletes, there's not going to be a lot of work, but it's the little things that make the biggest differences. So congrats to you, Emmy. It looked absolutely awesome. Now, the other story that I really wanted to go into is Jordan. What is the scenario with Jordan where she got beat by Emmy? Was it Jordan's fault, or was it just Emmy is that good? And I think this is a little bit of both, if I'm being honest. If looking at Jordan's physique, when I saw her pictures and I was seeing the live stream, I didn't think there was a whole lot of issues with Jordan's physique. Then when I was like, okay, she got third at this show. She didn't play so well at the last show, didn't play so well at the Arnold. Like what's going on where the number 12 ranked girl is not performing as well as she should be at the last 3 shows of the year, right? And so I looked back and I was like, okay, I want to look back at the pictures. I want to look back at the video, and I look back at pictures and video of the Olympia. The only big difference that I see of Jordan now and of the last few shows and this show is a very slight difference in the conditioning of her glutes and her legs from the back. I do think when she gets that extra layer of leanness, that extra level of lean that she was at the Olympia, her waist also comes in quite a bit from the back. So is that the difference? Because I don't think she needs to be, by the book, I don't think she needs to be leaner by the book. By her own previous standard of conditioning that she was at the Olympia, her waistline does come in better. Her waist to hip ratio is better from the back when she is a little bit leaner. Her tie-ins do come in obviously a little better when she's leaner, but is that really the difference? Because by the book, she is technically as lean as you would need to be for bikini. But again, some people transform quite a bit with that extra, that last 2 pounds of body fat that might be there. I don't know if that's the case, if that's the feedback that she got, but looking back at it, that's the only thing I really see as being the difference. I don't see a significant difference of her look now and her look from the Olympia, other than just a little bit leaner. And it's not a lot, but it is an obvious amount leaner. I would say I would probably lean towards 3 pounds, something like that, but It's a lot, but it's not a lot, right? It's that last bit. Her waistline really comes in that last extra level of leanness and conditioning, and it really changes her ratios, especially from the front and well, actually from the back too. So I guess from both. But I mean, great look. I'm thinking after this show, there's a couple factors here. One, you got to understand the girl who won the show was like the leanest girl in the show. So when you compare yourself, if she's the front runner and you're comparing that level of conditioning, yeah, of course you got to get leaner. That's kind of the base of the show. You know, you have someone who kind of ends up being like the standard of the show, which is first place, and then you're kind of compared to her. Okay, are you as lean as her? No. Are you as big as her? No, or whatever the case may be. Jordan is as big as her. But you know, you get what I'm saying. That kind of becomes the standard of the show, and you kind of compare everyone to that criteria. And compared to Emmy, yeah, Jordan is definitely not as lean as Emmy. And if you compare Jordan to Jordan at the Olympia, yeah, she's not as lean as when she won the Olympia. So I think that's it. It's going to be an easy fix as she goes into the Pittsburgh. I think if that's the feedback she got, and this is just me seeing it, what I'm seeing, if that's the feedback she got, you know, come in a little bit tighter for Pittsburgh and bump up. Maybe Emmy jumps into that show and you get that momentum back from Emmy at Pittsburgh by beating her and maybe being, you know, even in that top three with the other girls that are there. And I'm going to do a full Pittsburgh breakdown this week when that list comes out. Now, also at that show, we saw Tayiana come back. And I did want to talk about Tayiana because obviously she's my athlete. I've been coaching her for a while now. And I wanted to go into her physique because she's taken a good amount of time off. And looking at her overall physique, a lot of people were asking, okay, I wonder what she's going to look like. I know she's put on a lot of size. And here's the thing. She went from competing at 102 previous to now competing at 109. So she put on 7 pounds from show to show. So a lot of lean mass. Now, we're also bringing in a fuller level of conditioning than she's brought for 4. So a fuller level as in a little bit softer because we're trying to bring down her legs from being overly strided, overly conditioned, because before her quads would be a little bit too strided, a little bit too much. Now, there is going to be a balance between her last look and I think her perfect look. I think that over the off season that she put on a solid 5 pounds of lean mass. I do think that there's probably an extra 1 pound to 2 pounds of body fat at this show than her prior show with that fuller look. And I do think that her best look is going to probably be 1 pound to 2 pounds less than that. So I'm thinking that she's going to be 108 to 107 on stage the next time. Obviously give or take the scenario, being in just a little bit tighter, and then we're going to be able to see that new 5 pounds of muscle and see it a lot better. Now, the thing is with her, she is super young. You got to remember, she was just a couple years ago the youngest bikini pro at the time. I think she was 18 when she got her pro card. I think she's 20 or 21 now. And she has a lot of time to put on muscle. Now, for her to be placing this high already at her age with her experience is saying a lot. That is a strong future this girl has. And I'm not just saying that because I coach her. I'm saying that because she is not the most developed, but she's already doing good. So here's the thing. When you see competitors who are maxed out and let's say they're getting 10th place, and they're maxed out, they can't put on any more muscle, they can't come in any leaner, there's not a whole lot they can do besides, posing and hair and makeup and these little things. Well, that competitor is pretty close to maxed out. That's probably as good as she's going to do. That's as far as her genetics will kind of let her go. If she gets any bigger, she's too big for bikini. There's going to be very little room for improvement. Now, there might be some room for improvement here and there, especially with posing. But in terms of the overall physique, for the most part, it's maxed out. And there's just not a lot of room there. Now, when you look at Tayiana, she got as high as 2nd place last year, and she's more muscular now. But if you look at her in the lineup next to the other girls, yes, she is the smaller of all the 5 girls, and she just needs more overall size and more density. But the exciting thing is she's doing this well already with so much more room for improvement. I could say that she's probably at 70% of her potential. That's crazy to think about when someone is at 70% of their potential and they're already doing that good. That girl has a huge future. So really happy with her overall showing. She's going to do a couple more shows this year. I do think that she can get to the Olympia this year in the right scenario. And obviously we're going to try a couple different looks and kind of go from there. I just like to go over her because obviously she did great. And I want to celebrate that. Her getting 5th place at this show in some real deep competition, I think is just commendable and awesome, especially considering where she's at with her development. I can't imagine what I'm going to be saying about her in 2030. I can't imagine where she'll be. I can imagine it's definitely going to be an Olympia contender and probably going to be someone we're talking about in that top 15 ranking. So, a huge future. Now, talking about that same scenario, Over the weekend, we also had Ari lock up her Olympia win. Now, I bring up Ari in that scenario because Ari is also someone who I think who is not at their full potential yet. And she's already doing good. I mean, she's already doing great. I mean, Ari is killing it. She's a multiple Olympia. I think she's got 3 Olympias, maybe 4. I think it's 3. And she's placed top 10 at the Olympia. And she is someone else that's not at her peak yet. She still has a lot of room for improvement on her physique. And what a physique it is. She has, I would say, one of the better physiques in terms of the genetic structure to almost everyone. Her genetic structure is in that top tier, like tier 1A structure in terms of bikini. She has that pretty muscle. Now, the problem is we haven't seen her hit the conditioning levels for today's bikini. If you put her next to Emmy, and if Emmy ends up being like a standard of conditioning, of course, Ari is going to look a little bit soft. Now, if you look at Ari in this show versus her last show, she is significantly leaner. She really brought her waist in. I didn't think she had any issues with her waist. I didn't think that was something that needed to be better. But when she brought that conditioning level in to bring her legs in, her waist did get better. And I think it was a positive. I think it helped her overall physique to bring that waistline in a little bit tighter. And looking at her legs from show to show, her legs are significantly better. If you remember my review from the last one, where she was just edged out for that Olympia qualification, her legs, I think, were the issue, especially from the front. That separation of where everything comes together, the quad, the hamstring, and that glute, that area right in the middle where all 3 come apart, you want to see some detail between all 3 of them, and that's where the conditioning was lacking before. Now, the other thing that I talked about with Ari was her overall conditioning from the back, and not her overall muscle development per se, but her density of her glutes. You know, especially when we see her in the walk, I think that her density of her glutes really shows that it's not there yet in terms of the density. Also in the tie-in, she wasn't as lean. This time she's a lot leaner. And I think that when you look at her next to that top tier competition, that's the area that as soon as she makes those improvements where her tie-ins come in just a little bit more, her density of her glutes is a little bit better, especially in that back walk, she's going to be top 5, no problem. Because structurally, there's nothing keeping Ari from winning an Olympia. Structurally, you know, when we talk about, okay, will your structure even allow you to win the Olympia, right? That's a thing. You know, you're going to have some competitors, and this is an unfortunate thing, where you may be good enough to get a pro card, but you may not be good enough to win a pro show. And then there's another thing where maybe you may be good enough to win a pro show, but you may not be good enough structurally to even be top 15, top 10 at the Olympia. And you might be able to be good enough to be top 10 at the Olympia, but you might not be able to win Miss Olympia because you don't have the structure, right? So it goes better and better and better structure and genetics and structure and genetics and muscle bellies and roundness and density and separation, all these different things. There's nothing I'm seeing on Ari's physique that is a limiting factor for her actually getting that title. So that's an exciting thing. And it's exciting because she's not at her peak yet. That's what I love, seeing that when someone is doing this good and they're not at their peak yet. I would say, now, if you look at Ari, we just talked about Tayiana. Ari is, of course, closer to reaching that peak than Tayiana at this point. I would say that Ari is, you know, getting into that 90% range of hitting her full potential. But I think there's still 10% more to go. And once she hits that 10%, the doors are wide open for her getting to a top 5 spot at the Olympia. I will not be surprised when she does that. I think that she will be someone that actually does that, especially with the improvements she's making, but she still needs those improvements. Will we see it at Pittsburgh? Will we see that density come through at Pittsburgh? Will we see another level of conditioning there? Who knows? We'll see what happens. It's going to be a big task to take on some of these competitors when you're looking at, you know, people like Ashlyn and Maureen and Amy. That's going to be a big task. But hey, she could surprise us if she comes in even a little bit tighter from this show to that show. She might be right there. Now, going into the Klash, she beat out Alice Rocha with a perfect score. Now, again, Alice Rocha, another top 15 Olympian, right? She got 15th place at the Olympia. She made it out of the sea of 16. Now, looking at Alice from the back, just incredible from the back. I mean, her back is so good, right? Round, full, dense glutes, awesome hamstrings. There's a little bit of detail, a little bit of separation in the hamstrings, especially in that right hamstring. Looks to be a little bit more separated than the left. It could just be the angle of the camera from this show. I only got pictures from this show, but I do notice it just a little bit where there's a little bit kind of too much separation in the hamstring. Not a lot, you know, this is me being nitpicky because we're talking about top tier athletes, top tier athletes. But from the back, the density of the glutes, I do think the density of the glutes from Alice, from the lower body, she does beat Ari. I would say that, especially I would say from the waist down, she beats Ari. From the hip to waist ratio, from the density of the glutes, from the tie-ins, the detail of the hamstrings and the glutes, I'd say she's a little bit better. But when you go up to that upper body, there is a little bit of an unbalance in terms of the balance from upper to lower body and the development and density from the upper to lower body. Not in the shoulders and the arms, but if you see the overall flow of the physique, I think that the hourglass shape of Alice could have a little bit more. I think that the lats can be a little bit more developed. And I also think that when you look at someone with shorter hair, I think that's the only problem that you run into. When you can see that upper back on someone and it doesn't have the development as the legs, it kind of hurts you. Now, the judges aren't supposed to be judging, the lats from the back, and seeing that. But when you see that large of an area, it's kind of hard not to say, oh, you know what? It's not as balanced as her, not as developed as her lower body. Her back could use a little bit more development, and just use some detail to match that lower body. Now, I don't know if that's going to be something that she heard from the judges or not. That's just me being a prior judge at 1.2 saying, hey, you know what? I would like to see a little bit better balance. In most competitors, you're not even going to see the upper lats like that. So it's a positive because I think her hair looks awesome, but it's a negative because I can see it. And now if I see it, I'm going to judge it, right? I'm going to compare it to the surrounding area and see for balance. Now, in that front pose, that's the other thing I think about Alice from the front. I think she could be a lot better if she just had a little bit more lat development to help with that overall shape and to get that overall upper to lower body to be maximized in its balance. It could also be posing, she's posing very profile on her waistline. And if she turned over her shoulders a little bit more, I do think she could have a little bit better balance from upper to lower body. But again, she's great. And I just think these are the little things to take her to the next level. Take her from 15th place to 11th place to 8th place and up. So those are the things, but from the back, if you're looking at the waistline down, I have her winning. From the front, I have Ari winning, and from overall total package, I would have Ari winning too. So that is the breakdown for the weekend. Great weekend. I mean, man, this is crazy shows. We got Ari, who was a top 10 Olympian. We got Alice, who was top 15. We have Jordan. We have Emmy upsetting Jordan, carrying momentum from San Diego. We have the freaking Pittsburgh Pro, which is going to be a crazy show over the weekend. I can't wait to see that Pittsburgh Pro. When that list comes out, wait for the video to drop. I'm probably going to have it out by Tuesday night. I think I'll have it out Wednesday at the latest. A lot to go into on that one, so be on the lookout. If you guys are a fan of bikini, you have to get the Pittsburgh live stream. It is going to be crazy, crazy good show. So anyway, that's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, like and subscribe. Algorithm is hurting people these days, so make sure to hit the notification bell. And as always, TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest prep with me, and I'll talk to you guys next time.